Gaurav, give us an understanding. Here is India too now asking for a probe, an independent probe into the killings that's taken place in Bucha, saying India does not support killings and they call for an independent investigation. S. Jaishankar has spoken in the parliament. Give us an understanding. How bad is the situation in Bucha?
It's terrible, Nabila. India Today was the first channel to report from Bucha after it was opened for security forces to move in. Remember, Bucha, Irpin, Heztomil, these are some of the worst places where fighting took place between the Russian soldiers and the Ukrainian soldiers from the 24th of February till the 30th of March, 30th and 31st of March, when the Russians finally withdrew from this area. And when we went into Bucha, there were dead bodies littered on the road. There were outside malls, inside, shopping complexes. Was what the Ukrainian government says is the torture and killing of innocent civilians in this battle. Now, of course, this is information that we've got from the Ukrainian government with pictures where they say that men and women, they were caught, their hands tied behind their backs, and then they were killed in cold blood, shot at at very close range. And what's happening right now, even yesterday when we were reporting from Bucha, there were international investigators that were coming in, medical teams that were coming in to carry out forensic investigations. We spoke to some doctors in Bucha through our translators who said that they will carry out every post-mortem of a suspected torture killing individual on video. It will be videographed. It will be videographed by a team of international specialists who will document, whether they've been killed at close range, whether they were tortured before they were killed, whether there were anti-mortem injuries on their persons, women, children in some instances. While we've seen those pictures, little girls in a state of undress and killed at close range. So this is what the Ukrainian government says. Now this will be put to investigation, and President Zelenskyy is also talking about an impartial international investigation and a war crimes trial that Ukraine is seeking. But in the fog of war, there is also a lot of information warfare, as the Russians put it. Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov has said that they withdrew on the 30th and the 31st of March. All this information only appeared post the 4th of April. According to Russia, this was ample time for Ukraine and West to fabricate evidence, to fabricate these stories, to tarnish Russia, as Ukraine, according to Russia, loses the battle on ground, especially towards the east and the south. Nabila.
Right, Gaurav, India has, right from the start of this war, has been against any kind of violence. India has been constantly condemning violence. But so far, what's happened in Bucha is undoubtedly a war crime. Now, who's to blame for this investigation? Independent investigation will clarify. But India has finally spoken out, asking and supporting for an independent probe. Now, how do you believe an independent probe will be carried out? If you can define for us what is an independent probe and reiterate what are those bodies that will really carry out this investigation and pin the blame on either side. If it is fabricated, then Ukraine must be pulled up. If not, then if Russia is responsible, then they need to go under trial. Who is that body that investigates this?
So India, from the beginning had a very principled stance on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. As External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar put in Parliament even today, India has always been against the use of force and violation of territorial integrity. And that is India's principal stance throughout. India has been for a solution through dialogue and negotiation, as the External Affairs Minister also put it. And this is something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also reiterated in his conversations both with President Putin and with President Zelenskyy. And this is what India has been seeking. And India has condemned this barbaric violence in Bucha that the whole world has seen. We are amongst the first teams to go inside Bucha on the 4th of April when those bodies were littered, still there on the highway. But most of the injuries or deaths that we saw seem to indicate that they were shrapnel injuries in blasts and explosions that had taken place, including the ones close to malls or on highways. except some that were on the roadside, but the bodies were all rotting, and it almost appeared as if they had been there for quite some time. Remember, this conflict started on the 24th of February. The Russians only withdrew from Irpin and Bucha and Hostomel around the 30th and 31st of March. So there was ample, they were there for quite some time, and we do not know when these deaths had actually taken place on ground. Point one. Point two, they're seeking international investigators from Europe, from other parts of the world. What will be the composition of this team? Which countries will they comprise of? We do not have those details as yet, and we were seeking those details from the Ukrainian government, but no clarity on that just as yet. But doctors are coming in from other parts of Europe also. Post-mortem reports are being videographed, is what doctors in Bucha told India today. They've set up emergency hospitals in Bucha to carry out whatever attention those who are injured also require. And in fact, we'll be filing a report very shortly about an ambulance actually going house to house looking for people. What we're also being told by the army in Bucha is that they are going to set up an office where people will be asked to come and give their testimonies about what happened in Bucha between the 24th of February and the 31st of March. All those statements will also be videographed. People will be asked to submit if they have any video evidence of torture. All of that will also be submitted as evidence. So all of this will be gathered. It is a time-consuming process, but Ukraine's government says they will put together a cast iron case to be able to, as they say, prosecute Russian soldiers and officers for alleged war crimes. And they're also naming the 64th Motorized Brigade, part of the division that was deployed in Bucha. They want list of names of officers and men who were deployed there to be able to take this case forward.
Well, Gaurav, let's really hope they find enough evidence to bring some clarity on who's responsible for this large-scale war crime that's happened in Bucha. We know that there's growing outrage across the globe. India now stepping in, asking for an independent probe, saying we're against violence. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, Moscow, on the other hand, is facing global revulsion and accusations of war crimes after Russian pullout from the outskirts of Kyiv. Ukraine raised this Bucha killing as well, calling it one of many Russian genocides. United Kingdom and European Union are now calling for stricter sanctions against Russia. Here's what happened.
Streets strewn with corpses. Bodies buried in shallow graves. Burned bodies left in the open. The grisly images of battered Bucha have sparked global outrage. Ukraine has raised the Russian brutality in Bucha at the United Nations Security Council. Kyiv has urged the UN to strip Russia of its veto power.
The UN system must be reformed immediately so that the right of veto will not become the right of a death, so that there is a fair representation of all world regions in the Security Council.
Without naming Russia, India condemned the civilian killings in Bucha and called for an independent probe.
We unequivocally condemn these killings and support the call for an independent investigation.
Moscow is facing global revulsion and accusations of war crimes after the Russian pullout from the outskirts of Kyiv revealed horrors inflicted on the civilian population. The UK has urged G7 to ban Russian ships and set a timetable for oil and gas exit.
On Thursday, I will be urging our NATO and G7 partners to go further in sanctions by joining us in banning Russian ships from our ports, cracking down on more Russian banks, going after industries that are filling Putin's war chest, like gold, and agreeing a clear timetable to eliminate imports of Russian oil, coal and gas.
Germany, France and Spain have expelled dozens of Russian diplomats following the Bucha killings.
Estamos hablando de un número de alrededor.
I announced that this morning we have decided to expel Russian diplomats and staff from the Russian embassy in Spain, who represent a threat to the interest and security of our country.
The United States is seeking to expel Russia from the UN Human Rights Council.
Yes, the president does not believe, he believes it's ludicrous for Russia to be a member of the Human Rights Council. And certainly the ambassador spoke to this today, and while she was on her overseas trip, and she will continue to make the case in her role when she returns to New York.
Russia has rejected all the charges. Kremlin claims Bucha is a monstrous forgery aimed at maligning Russia.
Российской стороны в адрес российских военных.
The entire course of events, a huge amount of data, facts and other parameters do clearly witness that this is a forgery conducted to try and smear the Russian army. It will not work.
Russia is facing other grave charges too. The UN has accused Russia of using cluster bombs in Ukraine.
OHCHR has received credible allegations that Russian forces have used cluster munitions in populated areas at least 24 times.
Cluster munitions pose an immediate threat to civilians during a conflict. Such bombs randomly scatter submunitions or bomblets over a wide area. The Convention on Cluster Munitions is an international treaty that prohibits all use, transfer, production and stockpiling of cluster bombs. World leaders are calling for tougher sanctions and accountability for alleged Russian war crimes in Bucha. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, Russian strikes continue to bleed Ukraine for 42 days. Russian Hellbirds have left the Ukrainian capital in shambles, and Putin's missiles continue to ravage some of the villages in the outskirts of Kyiv. The town of Bordyanka near Kyiv is in complete ruins. European media reports have disclosed that hundreds of civilians were estimated to be killed by Russian invaders. Ukraine has now said that the town would likely record a higher death toll compared to the horrific Bucha massacre, which killed hundreds of innocent civilians. Destruction, devastation has taken over Ukraine's besieged port city Mariupol. Bruised and battered with relentless Russian attacks, civilians in Mariupol are seen fleeing the ravaged city. In Mykolaiv, Russian forces damaged a hospital building after a massive explosion of a van took place. Blowing out windows, we're seeing large-scale devastation in most parts of the city. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has given the UN Security Council a harrowing account of atrocities in Bucha, demanding Russian leaders to be brought to justice for the war crimes. Zelenskyy has also accused Russia of using the United Nations UN to justify all the horrific crimes that's taken place. Now, the Ukrainian invasion has taken a toll on President Zelenskyy. The biggest indicator here is how his attire has changed from that of a president in a suit to a leader leading from the front in an olive green T-shirt and sometimes in army gears. Here's a report on the transformation of this fearless President Zelenskyy.
A clean-shaven President Zelenskyy in his suit and tie addressed his nation on February 22nd amid gathering Russian war clouds. Weeks later, dressed in an army jacket, a bulletproof vest, an unkempt beard, and often sporting a bulletproof army helmet, this is President Zelenskyy reinventing himself, changing his attire as per the need to lead his nation locked in a fierce fight back. The war has taken a toll on the sartorial sense of President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, transforming a suave, urbane and nattily dressed president in a tailored suit into a wartime president in combat fatigue, battle-ready and boosting the morale of his forces.
Ukraine is defending and would not give its freedom, whatever they think in Moscow. Russia cowardly attacked our country early in the morning, very much like the Nazi Germany did during the Second World War.
Presidents
do not usually write down addresses like this. But today, I have to say just that. To talk about the discoveries in Bucha and other cities from where the occupiers were expelled. Hundreds of people tortured, killed, and civilians executed. Bodies on the street. Booby-trapped areas. Even the bodies of the dead are booby-trapped. Widespread aftermath of looting. Concentrated evil has visited our land. The killers, executioners, rapists, murderers who call themselves an army and who deserve only death after what they have done.
Zelenskyy has also traded his suit for a plain green round-neck t-shirt, popular with soldiers ever since Russia waged war on Ukraine. From addressing the United Nations, the US Congress, the EU Parliament and the Grammys, the wartime president, Zelenskyy's dressing sense has made him a cult figure for those who back Ukraine, sending a message that the wartime president is leading from the front.
The UN system must be reformed immediately so that the right of veto will not become the right of a death, so that there is a fair representation of all world regions in the Security Council.
Zelenskyy's military round-neck t-shirt has become a fashion trend as well, making it popular for t-shirt motif across the world. The change in appearance for a president is usually that of graying hair, but Zelenskyy's transformation shows how times are tough for Ukraine. And what can be a better symbol of hope and strength than an olive green shirt-clad president who switches into combat dress in solidarity? A connect between the president and the army fighting for the motherland. Choosing the most accessible garment around, Zelenskyy's message is clear. He's in solidarity with Ukrainians. Bureau Report, India Today.